with Joy and Tova. I'm Joy, JJWalsh, here in Hiroshima, a Hiroshima based sustainability focused consultant for the travel industry and small businesses. And this is
Hi, I'm Tove Kinoka. I'm based in Yokohama, just outside Tokyo. Also a sustainability consultant, but working with mainly big corporates, getting their people aligned with sustainability strategies and ambitions.
and we have started collaborating on this weekly talk show to give you some ideas about some of the news and topics that have been on our radar as we go forth and go into this really exciting event that we're planning together March 21st, which we hope will still go ahead. It will go ahead in some form, whether we're in state of emergency, it might just be online. If numbers are okay, we're going to have an in-person venue in Hiroshima, in-person venue in Tokyo, and online at the same time from 9 to 4 on the public holiday, March 21st. So please save the date.
Absolutely.
All right.
Look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah. Fingers crossed we can go ahead in person and online.
I hope so. Yeah.
Now, I'd like to start with a little bit of practical information because I had a Twitter exchange. A woman had bought some rechargeable batteries and she just had the pack of rechargeable batteries and she was asking, do I need to buy a charger now too? So I think the basic understanding about rechargeable batteries is worth talking about. So this is the rechargeable battery. I would recommend buying rechargeable batteries. It's a little bit more expensive, but you can use it for a really long time. You can buy a plug-in charger like this into the wall socket. There's also USB chargers. I like chargers like this that have the smaller and the regular size, so you can choose and charge them both at the same time if you want to. So it's just a great initiative to reduce your garbage, because if you're using single-use batteries, it does create problems in the waste management system as well. So it's a good idea.
Absolutely. It's really good to see a charger like that with two, because I know we've got one that is for the sort of the most common size of batteries, but we don't have one for the smaller ones. So it's great to see.
Yeah. And she was also asking, do you have to buy the same brand charger and battery? And in my experience, no. You can definitely mix and match, no problem. I know Amazon has their own brand of rechargeable batteries. It works with any charger, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Another quick tip is wash your filters on your heaters. So if you have air conditioner and you use it as your heater now, or and you're changing, most people change the filters or wash the filters every season, but it's a really good idea now that we're kind of mid-winter. We've got another month maybe of using the heater before we turn it off. Just take those filters out, give it a quick wash, dry them, put them back in. It's not too hard. And according to the Energy Agency, can save you 5 to 15% on your energy bill.
Wow, that's significant. That
right?
Really is significant. Yeah.
Another example where you can be more sustainable, reduce your energy consumption, which is better for reducing your carbon, but you're also saving money, right? Important.
Very much so. Whether you're an individual or a company, I think that's definitely an incentive, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Tove, do you want to start with about the seminar, the webinar that you were a part of recently?
Right. Yes. So back at the right at the beginning of the year, we did a webinar with our partners, NWorld Executive Search, and you can see Rob England there in the picture from NWorld. And we were looking at basically, what are the trends? Oh, sorry, it was in December. My gosh, time has gone very quickly. We were looking at the trends that had sort of been happening in sustainability, or not so much trends, the shifts really. A trend, feels like something transient. It comes and it goes. This is really a substantial shift with companies realizing that this is here to stay. This is an imperative for their businesses. Like you say, there are cost connections as well as the compliance and ethics of it all. So we had this event with NWorld where we were looking at what are the big shifts happening and how are they impacting people in organizations. And we looked at a number of different aspects. And one of the points that Rob brought up from NWorld's perspective. So NWorld, executive search organization. They work with a lot of the big gaishke, the international companies here, as well as a lot of the big Japanese companies. And they're looking at placing people in top level roles. And he said there's been a noticeable shift in companies understanding that these roles really need to be valued. So for recent years, it had been that companies were starting to set up sustainability teams. Perhaps they were often saying, "Okay, well, how do we find these people? Is it someone we've got internally who says, yeah, I'm interested in sustainability?" And they'll go, "Right, okay, now you're the head of sustainability." But the pay and the respect the role got, if you like, was often fairly low level. It wasn't really considered part of the top level executive team, and that seems to be shifting in sort of Europe. That's been happening for quite a long time now. A lot of companies are actually, for example, IKEA makes their CEO or country leader is also their chief sustainability officer in any of their territories, which immediately brings that top level accountability. But we're starting to see that happening a little bit more in Japan now, which is really interesting and a wonderful shift to see. This needs to happen. It needs to be up there. The pay needs to be in line with the level of responsibility and things. But it's interesting to see that also now from MWorld, they're hearing that there's a gap. Okay, so companies say, okay, we want to create this role. We need these people. Where do we find them? And all of a sudden, it's there's a gap between the needs of the business community and not so many people out there yet with the kind of perfect combination, if you like, of that top level managerial experience, the ability to think strategically and to really make decisions at an organizational level, but also having enough knowledge of sustainability to be able to make the right decisions there. So we've got people who are coming up who are maybe deep subject experts in particular areas of sustainability, maybe don't have the broader organizational experience or knowledge. So we're kind of at this interesting tipping point, perhaps, where I think companies are looking to, and certainly some of the ones we're talking to and the NWorld are talking to, are having to think, okay, so what do we prioritize when we create this role and this team and we're trying to find the right people for it? What does the right person look like, and what is their profile, and actually what are the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves? So that was a really interesting conversation, and I think we can pop the link in below. There's a summary, there's the article summarizing it, but also you can watch the video if you've got a bit of time.
It was a really good discussion. I really liked the whole idea that your partner Gavin was talking about, transferability. Finding people who maybe don't have the training or the expertise yet, but they show potential for understanding how sustainability can be applied and put into action. And those are the people you want to choose and start training and getting them going, right? And this is a real problem, I think, in Japan right now, is you have all this sustainability talk, SDG like optics, without any real connection to how it works, right? One clear thing that I've been talking to businesses recently is about optics, right? So if I look at any SDG seminar like this one, I was really happy to see balance. You've got a balance in the number of men and women on screen, right? Yeah. Not just men talking, not just people in suits talking. You've got a variety of ages. You're showing inclusion and diversity. It's not just about what you say, it's about what you do. I had to give some advice to a company that I was watching their webinar, and everybody in their panel had single-use plastic water bottles. And I said, in 2022, that's not good enough. You cannot do that. If you're talking about SDGs and you're using a single-use bottle, no good. Why not? Why not filtered water and glasses? Let's think about the optics. And are you showing that you're doing what you say and saying what you do, right?
Absolutely. And I think, if you want people to trust what you're saying and it to be really credible, then that is absolutely, a must, right? You can't be saying one thing, advocating one thing, and then your behavior shows exactly the opposite, or that you're not, really caring about that at all. And I think a lot of companies have been caught out with that. On social media, we've seen things. There was a thing with Coca-Cola, I think, last year with the famous footballer taking the bottle and putting it out of the shot and things like this. And you're forever seeing posts on Facebook or whatever commenting on this. They can't keep getting away with it, and that is something that is needs to be part of the conversation. That awareness of how it comes across and whether you want people to believe what you're saying or not.
Absolutely. And I did a Sdg seminar last week, and I thought it was really good. And we had really good responses. I was talking about how Japan perceives sustainability in terms of some surveys that were done here compared to how consumers and the public sees sustainability in other countries, and kind of comparing or benchmarking where Japan seems to be right now and where other countries seem to be, just to have a general idea. And one of the interesting comments was about the word sustainable. The word sustainability is a problem in Japan because nobody understands it.
Right.
And then that got me well, there's a great comment. Really happy to have that. But it got me thinking about, there are Japanese words like sampoyoshi, the idea that the company is going to take care of not only the customer, but also society, as well as their own business. But I see big things lacking in that. You're not talking about the environment clearly. You're not, like, you're assuming that part of that would be the environment. But what I try to get across is sustainability is like an umbrella. And then inside, there are so many areas that we need to work on. And so we really do need to stick to that word sustainability or sustainable, and the balance between people, planet, profit, because that's the most, in terms of my perspective, that is the most clear way to start talking about it. Right. And you had this great graphic here, Tove.
Well, this is from the Stockholm Resilience Center, and I think it just really illustrates very clearly that, very often when you're talking about sustainability, if you use that word, people very often jump to, oh, it's environment, or you're talking about plastic waste, or you're talking about, carbon emissions. And that's part of it. Yes, absolutely. But as you can see really clearly from this, you've got different levels. So you've got the biosphere levels. If we're looking at the 17 SDGs, for example, you've got biosphere levels. We're looking at forests. We're looking at underwater, land use, etc. But above that, the next layer is society. These are all people related to the way we live our lives, our businesses, our education, and things like food and gender equality, health, etc. And then on top of that, you've got, like you were saying, the business side, the economy, up there as well. Sustainable consumption and use and all of these things. And I think it's very easy for people to fixate on one particular aspect of sustainability and forget that there are all these bits, and they're very, very strongly interconnected and interdependent. And this is something we spoke about a little bit over the weekend when we were speaking to our other team member for this event, Shirley Courtian, who we will be speaking to in a few weeks on this live stream. But the fact that she works a lot in the gender equality space, but also cultural differences and accepting, people who are different, and understanding how those can bring benefits, and how having equality between different cultures and backgrounds is also a part of sustainability. You cannot have, a sustainable company or society if people are marginalized or treated unfairly, and that's part of it as well. So I think that I like that model from the Stockholm Resilience Centre, because it just clarifies really well that there are these different layers, but they're all interlinked.
Absolutely. And to simplify, you could say the bottom layer is planet,
Yep.
and the middle layer is people, and the top layer is profit, right? And so
Absolutely.
finding a way to balance the needs of
Yep.
people and the needs of planet with
Yes.
the needs for profit, because we
Yep.
know that if you're not making income, you're not going to be sustainable either, right? So
Exactly.
it really is that balance between the three. And if you only focus on profit, we see loads of problems with that, right? So you really have to think about all three. And
Yep.
I think the people, planet, profit, it's just the easiest way to describe it, I think, where
Yes.
people should be able to start getting it. The more you hear it, the easier it becomes to apply to other news and ideas, right?
Exactly. Like you say, it's a great way to simplify it and make it understandable to anyone and everyone. And I think we were talking about awareness as well, and how that in different sectors of society, if you like, so in the business communities, but in sort of local communities at a global level, in schools, in all these different sort of sectors of our world and lives, that awareness is often quite shallow still, and a lot needs to be done on just building that fundamental understanding of what is sustainability, how does this connect to me, and what can I do about it.
Absolutely. And then linking it to Japanese culture and Japanese traditions and Japanese heritage
Yeah.
and ways that we were doing it in the past. And we should bring that back, because that's a really good idea. It might be less convenient, but it's better for the long term, like making those connections.
Yeah.
One of the concepts which I think is often misunderstood is MOTTAINAI, right?
Yes.
So the idea of don't waste, that's actually complicated. What does it mean not to waste? Right? Like
Yeah.
if you have, I heard this example from a local cafe, like a vegan cafe. And I was like, your food is so sustainable. You're doing so much plant-based food. It's wonderful to see that, because we know meat and fish has such a high carbon impact on the world and people. It's wonderful to see, but he was using plastic straws in all his smoothies. And I said, why are you using the plastic straws? And he said, it's motainai, because I have boxes and boxes of these plastic straws. And I
Right.
was like, that's interesting. I get what he means.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, from someone who does beach cleanup and picks up plastic straws from the rivers and the ocean, I know that it's better not to use it. It's
Yeah.
going to end up in the garbage system eventually, if you use it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I would advise just put it into the recycling or garbage right now and stop using it, because
Yeah.
if that ends up on the street and in the waterways, it's going to cause more damage down the line, right?
Yeah.
But those kind of considerations are really complicated when it comes to motainai, right?
Very much so, and particularly, for a small business like the one you're talking about, that's a cost consideration as well. If they've already had outlay on a particular item that was bought before they had the awareness of the impact it has, that for them, if they're suddenly having to write that off, that's a cost to their business. And I think particularly with the corona situation at the moment, small businesses, and particularly the ones that cannot operate online, like cafes and restaurants, they're really feeling the pinch, right? So the idea, I can understand both from an emotional point of view of, it's mottainai, it feels wasteful to not use something you've already got. But there's also that, okay, well, if we dispose of this responsibly and carefully, we've still got to buy something to replace it. And that's another outlay for our business. And then that straws, okay, that's a fairly small example, but I think this goes a long way as well, and can be at a much larger scale. So one of the projects we worked on last year was with a very large Japanese coffee company. and looking at their materiality issues. So we were looking at, where is their biggest impact? What about their energy usage? And the waste and all of these different aspects. And one of the things that they'd broken down and had figures on was the equipment in their factories. So they've got all these factories in Japan that are producing, processing the beans, the roasting, the producing the bottled coffee, the canned coffee, and all these things going out there. And then they've got the whole delivery, infrastructure as well, the trucks and things like this. And they're saying, okay, well, the plan is to shift to EVs for the delivery. That's great. And to these much more efficient roasting machines. But that's a massive outlay for the company, a huge outlay. So they've really got to stage this very carefully and think about that investment. And they know that in the long run, it lowers their carbon emissions, which means they're going to be less liable for carbon tax in the future, which would be a huge potential, definite upcoming future cost for them. But in the short term, that hurts. That really hurts, having to take that hit to say, what do we do with these machines? They're still perfectly functional, but they're inefficient. They're having a negative impact, and we know we need to replace them. So there's the whole MOTTAINAI aspect of getting rid of something that is still serving its purpose, but also the outlay and the cost to the business of doing that. So it's really a difficult topic.
Yeah. Right. And I had a friend who was thinking about solar panels when we had our solar panels put on. It's a big investment. You have to pay it off over 10 years if you get a loan, right? But she was saying, oh, it's MOTTAINAI because I really need to fix my roof first. And then get solar panels. And I was trying to put her in touch with my solar seller, Kyocera, because they were saying it wouldn't be a big cost if you decide to get your roof fixed after to move the solar panels while you're fixing your roof, put it back on. It's not a really big deal. So I put her in touch, but she decided she wanted to do that order, right? The Jinban, get the roof fixed and then get the solar panels. But it's been 20 years and she hasn't done the roof or the solar. So, like thinking of these things, I understand the consideration, right? And you really have to make the best decision for yourself. But you have to also be honest about what really is my best option right now, right? And can I afford it? And if I can't afford it right now, how long until I can afford it? Like there's all these considerations, right?
Absolutely. And also thinking about sort of that, sort of analyzing the options there, you can think about, yes, can I afford it? What is the outlay required right now? And how does that impact me? But also, if you think longer term, there's what is the impact to me in terms of finance, but also other aspects as well of quality of life, etc., of not doing this. So that's something we worked with the coffee company last year, saying, okay, yes, this is painful now. You've got these huge costs coming up, and you can see that. But the cost of not doing it long term, in terms of the carbon tax you have to pay, B, the perception, you cannot go credibly saying that we are sustainable in the way we produce our coffee if you're making this impact, and you're making that impact, you're making no effort to reduce it. So you've got the whole reputational impact as well, back to optics, as you were saying at the beginning. The cost of inaction can be considerable as well, although it's often more difficult to see and it's further down the line.
Yeah. Absolutely. I did find one interesting example from outside Japan. This amazing woman, Wangari Maathai, and she was the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004. And she started a tree planting project in Africa, which also empowered women, which also educated people. And she adopted the word MOTTAINAI as like her theme word for what she was trying to do. And I thought that was really cool to see that Japanese word reused in such a positive way. Really wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think there's often so much we can learn from other cultures and bring on board. And it was interesting. You were saying that in your SDG seminar, people were saying, well, the word sustainability isn't really understood here, but it's an import word. And yes, there is the Japanese version, as we discussed last week, but often that's not really understood either. But I think, over time, it will come to be understood. And then, if people can understand what it embodies, what it infers, and everything that is underneath that, then it becomes a really valuable asset, and a really helpful way to be able to talk about these issues.
Absolutely. And if you can show how your destination, your business is applying SDGs in action, giving examples of how it works with your products and your services, giving those specific examples as examples of sustainability or SDG in action, that's
Yeah.
really key right now. Right. So when I was doing this tour guide seminar in Hiroshima Station, I would always take them to this Hiroshima brand display and and tell them, like when you're showing these locally made products made with local wood, made by local craftspeople, not packaged in plastic. There's so many wonderful examples right here that you can show to visitors, which will really impress them.
Yeah.
Right. So let's look for what we have and highlight that, because we do have a lot.
Yes. And it's often a great way to get things moving, right? To start with the positive stories. I think certainly with the work we do with corporates, if we come in and we just look at what they're doing and say, no, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're not doing that, and come in with everything that's wrong and that they could be doing, but they're not, people don't respond well to that. But if, yes, they need to know it. You can't sugarcoat, things that really need to be changed. But I think if you can also look for those positive examples, like you said, whether that's external branding or whether that's things that they're doing in the company, and say, look, this team over here in this function is already working on this and they've reduced their waste or their energy consumption in this department by this amount. That's fantastic. What could you guys do in your department? Let's use this as a catalyst for change, and to build that positive momentum. Totally agree with you. It's really, really powerful.
Awesome. It's time to talk about books. So I would like to start this Friday at 8 a.m. Japan time. I am talking with the amazing journalist Ian Urbina, who has started this journalistic project called The Outlaw Ocean. So he wrote the book, The Outlaw Ocean, which is also in Japanese. You can see the Japanese version up there in many languages it's been translated into. And the book is such a great example of how one issue, talking about the oceans, is so complex and has so many examples of how we need to think about human rights and the people aspect. We need to think about the environmental aspect, definitely, and how governments can get involved to make rules. But all governments really need to work together, because one government, it's not good enough. Like the ocean's a really big place. So there's so many great examples and insights from his stories that I hope to dive into this Friday. So please join us.
That's brilliant. Now I'm really looking forward to listening to that. That sounds fascinating.
Awesome. And Tove, you had a great book to introduce?
So on another section of sustainability, this time the people side of things, looking the book I've picked up is I Took Her Name by Shu Matsuo Post. So Shu, for anyone who hasn't seen his LinkedIn post or Facebook post, he's very, very active there. So he's Japanese, but he married a lady from North America and decided that he would take her name. So Post is her surname. Matsuo was his original name, and they both changed their surname to Matsuo Post. He didn't see the reason why, he should or she should change her name completely to his and lose her identity. But this caused havoc with the paperwork side of things when they came to Japan, and trying to get the name recognized legally was really, really difficult. So he learned a lot. He was very surprised by this. He learned a lot through that experience about gender inequality, particularly here in Japan, and how the men are perceived as the providers, the head of the household, and so on. And there's really no other options there, very difficult in the legal system, and often society and expectations as well. People were very surprised when he decided to do this. So it's, that is the book is about his personal story, and then he looks at that as a way to understand sort of toxic masculinity and expectations, how we can look at things from both sides of the story and be much more inclusive and build a more positive version of masculinity as men as feminists going forward. So I'd highly recommend reading this. It was a really interesting book.
It's a great book. And I had the chance to interview Shu Matsuo Post in the series in 2021 at the beginning, I think. So I'd love to follow up and see how, after his book was published and his further speaking engagements, how his ideas might have changed or updated a little bit. It'd be wonderful to catch up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, thank you, Tove, and thank you, everybody, for joining. That is our 30 minutes short takes and updates. Please join us again next week. I think next week we've decided on Wednesday the 9th.
That's right.
For the next short takes and updates. So 9 a.m. on the 9th. Easy to remember. Please join us then. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.